Hello. Now, today we're going to be looking at fraction addition and subtraction. So adding fractions and subtracting fractions. The steps in adding and subtracting fractions will always be exactly the same, no matter how complicated the maths gets. We're always going to want to get the same number underneath both. So get a common denominator. So this is the numerator is the top number, denominator is the bottom number. We are always going to want to get a common denominator, the same number on the bottom, and then we can add and subtract the numerators, the top line, as we like. So at the moment I have a half plus a third. So what I want to do is find the smallest common denominator that I can, which is called the lowest common denominator. That's going to be the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3. So what's the smallest number that both 2 and 3 divide into? So I could have this number divided by 2 or this number divided by 3. And if we can't think of what to do in a particular circumstance, if we can't figure out what to do for particular numbers, we can just multiply the two numbers together and that will always work. But often for bigger problems, it's best to look for the smallest number we can get underneath. But in this case, 2 by 3 is equal to 6. 6 is going to be the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3, and it's what we want underneath both our fractions. So what we're going to do is multiply our 2 by 3. But to do that and keep the fraction the same, we have to do the same thing on the top of our fraction. We have to keep the ratio of the top and the bottom the same. Now to get 6 on the bottom of this fraction, we have to multiply it by 2. And to keep everything balanced, to keep the ratio the same, we have to multiply the top by 2. So if we do that, we get 3 all over 6 plus 2 all over 6. And now I have sixths. I have this many sixths plus this many sixths. So I can just count up how many sixths I have in total. And I have 5 of them in total. I have 3 of them plus 2 of them. I have 6 of them. I have 5 of them in total. So I have 5/6 is my final answer here. Now if I'm subtracting fractions, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. The lowest common denominator is going to be, what's the lowest common multiple of 5 and 7? Let's, in this case again, just going to be 5 multiplied by 7 is going to be 35. So I want to get 35 underneath both of my fractions. So I need to multiply the 5 by 7, and I must do the same thing on the top. I must multiply the 7 by 5 to get 35, and I must do the same thing on the top to keep my ratio the same. So I end up with 21 all over 35 minus 20 all over 35. And now I have 21 35ths minus 20 35ths. So I have 21 minus 20 all over 35 is equal to 1 all over 35. Now, if I have a situation like this where I just have a whole number, all whole numbers are secretly over 1. So if they give us something where we just have a whole number like 2, we know, without having to be told, that it's secretly over 1. Its denominator is 1. So now I have lowest common denominator, exactly the same steps as before. What's the lowest common multiple of 1 and 2? It's again just going to be multiply the two of them together and you get 2. So I'm going to multiply here by 2 over 2 to get the same denominator underneath both. I don't need to multiply this by anything, so I just leave it alone because it's already got 2 as its lowest common denominator. And now I have 4 all over 2 plus 5 all over 2. So I have 4 plus 5 all over 2 adds up to 9 all over 2. And that's my final answer. Next step, we can have more than 2 things added together. But I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So I have 3 over 2 minus 1 plus 5 over 4. This 1 is secretly over 1, just like all whole numbers are. So what's my lowest common denominator? I have a 2, I have a 1, and I have a 4. What's the lowest common multiple of 1, 2, and 4? 4. So in this case, I don't want to just multiply my numbers together because I'd get 8, which is bigger numbers than I have to deal with. I will get the correct answer if I just multiplied my denominators together. So you can just multiply all the denominator numbers together, but it starts to get, the numbers can get very large and very confusing. So if we can spot the smallest number that all of these divide into, that's much better for us. So 4 is the smallest number that we can divide all of these into. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 divided by 4 is 4. 2 divided by 4 is 2. So I want to get 4 as the denominator underneath everything here. So I need to multiply this 2 by 2, and I must do the same thing on the top. I must multiply this 1 by 4 and do the same thing on the top. And I don't have to multiply this by anything because it's already 4. So I end up with 6 all over 4 minus 4 all over 4 plus 5 all over 4. And now I can add up all my numerators, or sum up all my numerators. And I end up with 6 minus 4 is 2. It's 5 all over 4. I'll do 7 all over 4. And that's my final answer. And lastly, we just have another example here of subtraction of fractions. And we are going to look for our lowest common denominator. So what's the lowest common multiple of 2 and 5? And again, we're back to just needing to multiply the two of them together. There isn't anything nicer than 10 as a lowest common denominator. So I'm going to multiply above and below by 5 to keep everything, to keep the ratio the same. And above and below by 2 here, because 5 multiplied by 2 is 10, and I want 10 underneath the line. So I end up with 35 all over 10 minus 6 all over 10 is equal to 35 minus 6 all over 10 is equal to 29 all over 10. And that's the job done. So you can see all of these questions follow exactly the same pattern. It doesn't matter if they give us whole numbers or if they ask us to add up or subtract more than two things. We're always getting the lowest common denominator, and then we are adding up the top numbers, the numerators, to get our final answer. And that's what we need for now.